I'm John Batchelor. This is the John Batchelor Show. Malcolm Hoenlein, Conference of Presidents in Jerusalem, continues with me. June 25th, 2006. June 25th. It is coming now, the 5th anniversary of the abduction of Gilad Shalit, a soldier in the IDF, by Hamas, the gangsters of the Gaza Strip. He was captured near the Karim Shalom crossing in Israel, and he's held hostage brutally by men who have no interest in peace, who hold him as a hostage for war. Malcolm, the capture of Gilad Shalit 5 years ago, this is the sort of thing that drives America nuts, and so I know it drives Israel nuts too. Is there present thinking about this? The negotiations were often rumored and then they were called off. Where are they now?
The general sense is that Hamas has no interest in negotiating. They've been offered very lucrative packages. They keep making announcements that we're close to a deal in order to build up pressure within the Israeli public, who by a 2-to-1 margin have indicated that they're prepared to make a very expensive deal in order to release Shalit. He's been held for 5 years, totally incommunicado, having no visitors, not even the Red Cross. They applied this week to, again, ask for a sign of life, which, you know, they've done in the past. Hamas allowed there to be a film released, him holding a newspaper, so there is a date. Now they've rejected even that appeal. It's now 5 years that he's had no contact with his family. It's torturous for them and for the people of Israel. There's a campaign now here in Israel to legislate more restrictions that terrorists in the Israeli jails have get many privileges and not accorded in other places. And the MKs and the Shalit family are saying, why are we allowing this to increase the pressure on Hamas from the families of those prisoners that they should not give them these extraordinary privileges? It's a very emotional issue across the board in Israel. It's discussed all the time, and a great deal of frustration about indicating the inhumanity of Hamas and how they use the torture of the families and of the people in general by manipulating it.
Malcolm, this incident, the grabbing of Shalit, was the beginning of what became the Hezbollah war of 2006. And while Syria disintegrates into chaos and a failed state, what is the status of Hezbollah that was in position to take over the cabinet in Beirut before hostilities started in the Arab Spring?
Yeah, again, another issue that many people here are looking at and see is somewhat in transition, but beginning to solidify. As you know, for months we've talked about the fact that the government was held up, especially by the Christians and in coalition with the Sunni population. Now the new cabinet indicates 30 members, but 18 of them are Hezbollah, which really puts them in a very strong position. That's 8 more than they had in the last cabinet, and many people thought that they would go for an even split, meaning that they would still have control, but clearly they've decided that they're going to be much more blatant in their activities. The issue that has everybody preoccupied in Lebanon, and to a degree those who watch the Syrian situation, is the report of the comments of Mechlis, the guy who was heading up the tribunal investigating the murder of the current former Prime Minister Hariri, and what he indicated is that it points to Syria, that they have direct evidence that this is indicating that Assad would have himself had to give the okay for an undertaking of this kind, for the assassination to take place. This is something Syria has feared all along. It doesn't exonerate Hezbollah from responsibility, but indicates that Syria was behind it, using Hezbollah, and they were complicit in it. This is going to be a very explosive issue, especially within Lebanon, where Hariri was popular even amongst some of the Shiite population.
Now, a deal of what we speculated about before the Arab Spring is moot, because our assumption was the Hariri report that would trigger provocations by Damascus, set off a war within the region. That's underway with the brutality launched by the Alawites of Syria. So do the Hezbollah remain as vulnerable to the facts here as they were before Assad Assad became a man in failure?
They are obsessive about this, and they have been for a long time. Now that they control Lebanon, they are concerned because, there have been demonstrations against them in Beirut and elsewhere, very courageous demonstrations led by the Christian community, participated in even by some of the Druze members, even though Gilad has gone with Hezbollah in coalition after feeling betrayed by the West. But they are very concerned that this will create a backlash, that it will excite both the population, the Christian population, perhaps Sunni population, that it will become a rallying point if they are in fact indicted and specifically pointed out. I think Assad right now has so many other things on his mind, he's probably not paying much attention to it.
Right, like where his wallet is. Malcolm, the UDI, that's long the acronym for the lawfare activity of the Palestinian Authority. Again, it seems lost in the mists of the campaign of last fall and into the winter, when we presumed that the Palestinians would be the centerpiece of turmoil in the region. That's Syria now. However, what is the status of UDI? We watch it very carefully, and last week you had some doubts whether Abbas would go through with it.
Well, I still have those doubts as to whether he'll ultimately make the move, knowing that if he goes to the Security Council, he faces a confirmed veto by the United States, and I think objections by other countries, even Germany, Italy, and others have come out strongly against it. But there are other alternatives, and that is going to the General Assembly, and while it doesn't have the force of law because you need Security Council approval, he would be able to use it to go to the International Court and claim certain status. And while the UN passed a similar resolution in '88, the situation is different now in that they can claim to have more of the qualities of the state. The internal situation right now is one of great unrest and internal divisions within the Fatah, let alone between Fatah and Hamas, where the unity government is not being implemented, and they're still fighting over Fayyad's participation as prime minister, over the, quote, technocrat government, which will be a front. So UDI has become now a political football where some of the forces are demanding that they proceed with it and talk about how they will exploit it once it passes. The problem is that most rational people see it as an illusion that the Palestinian people who face then losing U.S. aid if this goes through, certainly Congress feels very strongly, some of the Europeans would press them and saying, why did we go through this whole exercise when nothing in fact will change at least on the ground and in their day-to-day lives.
It is peculiar, Malcolm, to continue to hear certain states saying they're going to support it at the General Assembly. Is there some kind of autopilot that this thing is on that hasn't been turned off yet, making statements that may not come to anything?
Well, the Palestinians every day are issuing contradictory statements. One day they say they're pursuing it. The next day they say they're not going to pursue it. They're saying if Abbas said if there's talks, then he won't do it. This was a rallying call for him. It's one of the things that he wanted as a legacy, be able to say that he declared the state, even if in fact that is not the case and it will not become a member. It will give him some leverage, but it will certainly be a deal breaker with Israel. I think the Israelis are working very hard in trying to line up countries to come out against it, and the implications, obviously, for the chances of negotiations are very great. And people hear, it's to a man, you hear the criticism, the concern about what the UDI, because it is untold how they will exploit it once it takes place.